And good morning, or hello, or good afternoon, depending upon what time zone you're in. Welcome to This Week in Hospitality Digital Marketing. I am one of your hosts, and the other one soon to join me is Robert Cole. My name is Lauren Gray with HospitalityDigitalMarketing.com, and Robert Cole just joined us with
Rachida. Thank you.
Do you have like a audio slogan that goes "Wow, Rachida"? You know, something like that. I mean, we make one.
I think we'll use a little clip from that right there. So I think you've already done it. So
powering up all of our other co-casting. For those who catch us live on the show with the link in the webinar, is the best way to get to us. Which is because then you can chat with us, you can join us on video if you like, and so forth. But for those of us joining on Periscope, YouTube Live, Facebook Live, Instagram Live, you get to go over into in the chat windows, and if I catch your comments, that's great. But it's better if you join us here, which the best, fastest way is to go to bit.ly, bit.ly/the numeric 2 HDM show 94. Yes, 94. Robert, you've been keeping me company for almost 2 years.
Oh no, I was just going to say that Lauren is the reason that they are getting rid of net neutrality, because he's just using too much video bandwidth.
I am sucking the bandwidth from the world. Yes, that might be.
You are going to have to pay the piper at some point. So.
You know, I keep finding these little technicalities with some things here. One is I'm my laptop, ever since we did an update with Mac, it doesn't seem to like my new webcam, or actually my old webcam is just the one that's not on the laptop. So I'm looking this way, and it's not out of disrespect. It's I keep thinking my camera's over there like it usually is, but it's actually over to my right, stage left. Anyway, we got a whole pile of stuff. You gave me a whole list of stuff to talk about, and we did feature that we were going to chit-chat a little bit about what has been coming out of the Facebook conference and the Google conferences. Then they don't call them conferences; they call them different things. But
I/O and F8.
Yeah, F8 and F9. Well, actually, Google's been the one that's been out of the gate. Facebook has yet to really. They've given a couple indications of some things they're doing. Of course, the biggest we discussed last week or the week before was the inclusion into the ad services, the header services. Mm-hmm. And for those who are unfamiliar with the process, header advertising is the active multi-bid platform in real time that allows you to have ads placed in different locales or different websites. And Facebook has been out of that. They've never been in that, except for a very high, thin level of Coca-Cola, Home Depots of the world have been able to do that. Well, they're now bringing it down to a lesser scale of opportunity for other people, which means that there's going to be a lot of interesting platforms. But they're coming in with some new rules and Google's changing some of the rules too. So it's going to make it harder and probably end up obviously more expensive, because you're going to have more players, but you have to have more accuracy. You just can't do blanket bid placements. You have to actually have a specific, because you're going through the Facebook filters now of relevance, and so to Google, where before you were picking and choosing where you wanted to be, regardless of whether it was considered relevant. So all those ads you've been putting on those porn magazine sites, Robert, are probably not going to stay. Just saying, they're probably not.
Boy, it seemed like such an untapped market.
We do have to give condolences to, let's see. Tim. Tim is not able to join us today, as he's one of our normal co-hosts from Tim Peter Associates, or All Things the Internet. And Mr. Edward St. Ange from Flip2, who is also one of our regular co-hosts, unfortunately got waylaid with, I don't know if you're going to believe this, Robert, client stuff.
I believe we need a new segment of the show, which is speculation on why a co-host might not be here.
I saw some of your suggestions, and I think one of them might stick, because I'm seeing, it's like Superman and Clark Kent with Tim Peter, yeah, and you think he's an arms dealer, which is entirely possible. He has a lot of interesting connections that we just don't know about. So he could be.
It actually ties in. Yeah, it ties into one of your points that you made on the legal taking down information and gaming Google on either accurate or inaccurate.
Yeah, Holly gave that to us last night. Yeah, that was Holly. She found that one, which I thought very interesting. Is she with us? Holly, are you in the room with us yet? Hard to see. I know she's Holly Zoba with Signature Series Worldwide is one of also our regular co-hosts, although she's the fact checker and power behind the throne. She's the one that usually keeps us honest and direct and gives us some very thoughtful insights when she decides to join. And then we also Mr. Stuart Butler. Huh?
Yeah, since Holly isn't here, Tim is out doing his other job, which is being an arms dealer. I guess we can say we have no. This is what happens when you don't have the subject present and you don't have the fact checker present.
That's right. So you know what?
Go anywhere.
We're calling what we see it. This isn't fake news, folks. This is real stuff. We're announcing Tim Peter is a bona fide arms dealer. We've checked it ourselves, and we're backing our own story. 4 out of 5 dentists agree.
Exactly. And if you look at his Facebook feeds, the places that he's traveled to have secret military bases. I mean, all sorts of just
what is this Oslo?
Crazy coincidences. I've got a chart back here with, you can't quite see it, it's out of the frame. It has lots of newspaper clippings and pieces of yarn.
Yarn connecting the pins.
I'm just putting it together. Yeah,
that's right. Oslo is really just a front for Area 51 for that part of the world. I think he's dealing with some other stuff too. Anyway. Well, keep it interesting because it is hospitality for us. We will get off of our co-host, writing them for the fact that they're leaving us solo because it'll turn into the Robert and Lauren show, which is deep dialogue down fun rabbit holes with tons of content and basic debauchery at one point or another. Okay, well, actually, since you did touch on it,
if you want to talk about, I have a little thing to post on regarding Facebook, which actually came from Recode. It was a nice little session they had on their podcast. Recode does a great Recode Decode podcast with Kara Swisher and fellow digital, what would you call them? Aficionados? I don't know. All things, it used to be all things digital when they worked for the Wall Street Journal. So, but they had a great thing on talking with the head of Facebook Messenger, and it's just there's too much to cover in this short time that we have together. But they started talking about the bots with Facebook Messenger and how Facebook Messenger ties in with WhatsApp and all these different things, and it was very interesting for how Facebook was approaching that, where WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger do work, at least they're claiming, completely independently. They'll share some learnings on, if Facebook Messenger is starting something in terms of a sign-on or authentication that WhatsApp's been doing. They'll share some information like that, but otherwise they're just doing their own things. But the bottom line was that the Facebook Messenger really came out that it really is being designed for how do brands engage with customers, and they want to have very natural discussions where they're authentic and not just one directional. Sales pitches and things like that. And a lot of people aren't using it that way right now. Now some are, but basically the platform is outrageously robust, and I've got to think, with that many people on it, it's going to be a big question for hoteliers. Do you kind of hop onto the platform and it suddenly becomes kind of Facebook's rules, Facebook's platform, but you can suddenly engage in ways that previously really were not possible.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with you. I've been playing with some bots for Facebook. It's not there yet. It's not ready for prime time for some of the things for hospitality that they can be suited for, because unfortunately we have more of an internal industry problem, and that is actual bandwidth resources at a property. First, do what you should do first, which is make sure you're doing with direct guest engagement before you start trying to automate processes, because automation is only as good as you build it. And if you create bots, which are semi-intelligent responses, they can look at content that you are questioning and derive what you're thinking that it determines is what you're looking for as an answer. And for some of the basic stuff, it works out exceptionally well.
Right. What are the hours of the restaurant or something like that? And as long as you have the hours of restaurant, if it closes early on a Sunday night, got to make sure that you have kind of the date context and things like that. And those are the sorts of things that really mess people up. And all of a sudden, you wind up with a horrible review on TripAdvisor because you lied to the guest about, your bot said the restaurant closed at 9 and it closed at 7. And, it was only in 2 hours before. And what a horrible place. And all of a sudden you've blown up your whole guest experience just by either trying to save labor or to try to provide a better guest experience. So. Yeah.
And it's an unfortunate, again, we sometimes rush, and I am calling the kettle black when I say this. We sometimes rush to go for the shiny object, and because of that, we miss some of the fundamentals when it comes to
So sorry.
Are you mocking me for the fact that you know that I'm a shiny?
No.
But it is true in the sense that actually part of it is one of the reasons why we love doing what we do, which is helping hospitality industry people do better jobs of marketing themselves and getting themselves into the space. And so we always have to be on the forefront of stuff. We always got to look for the shiny objects, because eventually it's not going to be the shiny object, it's going to be the norm. Or it got discarded because it got hopscotched with something else. So we got to be that person that knows those things. But that said, when it comes to us talking to our clients often hear the same things over and over from us, which is fundamentals, fundamentals, fundamentals. Do the things you're supposed to do right first before you start trying to do the unique things afterwards. And bots, it falls really squarely in that definition, because bots are for somebody that is already in a good, scalable GSS environment. They got great guest recovery programs. And actually, you know what? Let's dive down a little hospitality rabbit hole for just a second.
Okay.
In client workings, we talk about the technology associated with improving guest satisfaction. We talk about how we can insert certain technologies to improve guest response times, guest engagement. We talk about these platforms. We've had some of them on the show with us. Mm-hmm. But some of the operational things are sadly lacking, because I don't know whether it's a gap in training of these people that are now responsible for their hotels. That, we grew up back in the whole hotel days where there was keys hanging on hooks, or at least in little trays that you pulled out and gave to people, hard keys. Yep. And and the fact that they would use the phone in their room was wow, and what's happening now is
I worked at a 600-room property in Yellowstone National Park as the front office manager, and there weren't phones in the room. There were cabins. It was the Canyon complex, largest complex in Yellowstone National Park. And when something's wrong, people get to build up a head of steam while they pick up the phone. Yeah.
So what happens is when I start talking about guest recovery programs with clients, they're like, great. So this thing, it's going to reach out to the customer. Customer's going to say something's wrong, and then we reach back. Yeah. And then I ask, what is your response? What is your recovery program? What's your protocol? What's your tiered? What tools are you giving your front desk agents or your guest service people, whoever you allocate this to? What are you telling them they have the authority and latitude to do? What is the staged progression of response? Right. And it's not. And please, for those who are listening, don't understand, this is not a scripted response. Hi, you'll begin on phones. Hi, I'm terribly sorry for the inconvenience we caused you. No. This isn't scripting. This is fallback offerings, fallback responses of, if it's something like this, the first thing you can offer is, can we give you a discount to your dinner this evening, or can we send something to your room, or an amenity of waters and snacks or whatever. There's like a little catalog of selections. This is level 1 things to do. When things happen, the front desk has the power to select from this selection list. Now, it's much worse than that. Now it's escalation point number 2. That doesn't work. It's well beyond these being satisfactory things. Okay, and that can be determined by the front desk agent or the guest response of, Right. And then you make more things like free room night, adjustment to their total bill, blah, blah, blah. Total comp would be a level 3 thing. Like, hey, this is so screwed up, we are not going to charge you for anything. And we hope that is in satisfaction for this terrible thing that happened to you. But then there's also engagement levels that get drawn into that. Tier 1 stuff, right off the hip, that's empowerment to your staff. They can make choices off of that list, and never will there be a question. Tier 2 stuff, maybe a supervisor should be involved with that, because now you're talking about revenue loss or something, and potential long-term revenue loss. Maybe there needs to be an escalation of engagement of that. Level 3 stuff, definitely exec level or a department head minimum level engagement that says, we're going to comp this or do this for you at this certain level. What I just said, I know, maybe some of the listeners know, but there's a whole mess of people out there that do not know. They don't understand that.
It's a complex business.
Yeah, you have to have these things set up so that you have a means of reaction that isn't off the hip and shooting from like, oh crap, because you do set precedents. Every time we talked about precedents last week, when you set precedents with something, if one front desk agent was able to give away the farm, and then this front desk agent gave away the farm and got chastised for it, what was the difference? Maybe it was a different scenario, but they see it as I did what they did. So give them parameters. People work well when they know that they can be empowered with certain levels of things that they can do that they're not going to be questioned on. Now, of course, there's always debriefing, like how did it come to us? And that's the other part of the protocol, is learning from the experience. There's two problems that always happen. The one that you have to solve immediately, and the recurrence problem that you don't want to have happen again. Like, okay, we fixed this. Now in the future, if this were to come up, first off, is there something we can do to fix it so it doesn't come up again? First question. Second, if it comes up again, what is this response in comparison to another response? And build a toolkit that we don't always respond the same way to the same problem. I used to tell my front desk staff after they solved a guest issue, it's like, great, never use it again for a while. And they're like, what do you mean? It worked. And it's like, yes, but if you rely on it too much, there will be a day it won't solve something. And you have no other option but this one. So find another option that's as equal in value, but different in its solution. And now you have a toolkit. Now you have 5, 6, 8 different things. And then we share that in the team so that all the front desk know, hey, when it comes to this kind of thing, these things have worked in the past. And now this is a toolkit that now we talk about repetition and training. In the Rocket program that I'm with, Bonnie does a great job of who trains you when you come in. Is it the product person that brought the product into the hotel? Or is it the person that the product person trained? Or are you getting a leftover trainer from the trainee to the trainer to the? I mean, how many iterations is
there none? Or is
right?
There no
or is it like what you're basically being shown is the 4th iteration of somebody having watered down the training where they only, hey, I'll show you what I know, blah 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 blah. Well, what they know is fractional compared to what they should know, or fractional compared to what was taught originally. So. Same methodology with as you bring in front desk people, and it's a sad thing to say, but you do have turning of staff for good and bad reasons. Usually, progression and promotions are the good reasons. Bad is they were disillusioned with the industry and don't want to work with you or whatever. But as you go through these people, you need to be able to give them a script of understanding what their role is and what's been successful behind them, so that they can add to that story. They can add the next chapter to. Well, those 5 things you told me I could do were great. I added 2 more. Now you have 7 things to the next person that comes in the door. And then you have 10 things coming into the next person in the door. So I know that it sounds like a soapbox kind of thing, but this is the conversations that aren't happening at hotels right now. They're like, where's the whizzy bang bot? I want the bot.
Right.
I want the thing to do. I don't want to have to take time to train people or give them responsibility or give them the option to give away stuff. I want the bot to tell these people.
Right.
It isn't it. This isn't the solution process.
And there are big pressures to do that because they wind up having. And I'm getting a big. Is that me?
I don't know. I don't have an echo.
I'm not sure. Well, now you're locked up.
No.
Oh, nope. Okay. It's gone. Thank you, Lauren. Maybe. You just hit those buttons, randomly.
There was an echo, and then there is none. Okay.
So. No, but the challenge is there are intense pressures to reduce labor costs, right? To maximize occupancy, do all these things from a financial bottom line perspective, which wind up being a very immediate. I mean, hotels close their books every night with a night audit, right? So, boom, here we go. Here's what's happened today. That sort of focus over a long term can wind up causing problems for you. So, not that you should be irresponsible, but you've got to, it's the same thing. Just put off repairs and maintenance, forget the renovations. Once you start putting stuff off, at some point the other shoe drops. And it's the same thing with training. But I even go beyond the training scenario. It really becomes a selection process for those for the staff, because again, maybe you're looking and saying, hey, this is an entry level position. We are going to pay minimum wage. We're going to have turnover like crazy, and let's go. Well, if you're going to have turnover like crazy, you're going to wind up having training costs, sort of thing. But if you cut both of those, that's not a good situation. And to have a staff member, especially at a front desk or someplace where they're right in the front line of guest engagement, you need people who have some experience and have have an understanding of, oh, I'm not freaked out by this. I know what to do. I've seen something like this before, never quite like this, but yes, I can try this, and here we go. So it's a lot of different things. It's the hiring. It's the training, and you said the guest empowerment or the staff empowerment to say, what's the objective of the hotel? What's the philosophy of running the place? the better ones that I've seen, and it translates into better TripAdvisor scores, is to solve the problem to the satisfaction of the guest, is kind of the bottom line. Make sure the guest is happy and satisfied with their solution. Now, you will get some guests who are trying to scam the hotel and things like that, but those are generally the outliers. But again, it's, if that is the objective, then you get into what you were talking about, which is what do you do to prevent these situations from happening? And you basically come up with a whole bunch of operational processes going, here's what we do. And that training process is not just say, here's what we do, but here's why we do that. And hey, that why ties into this whole operation, this whole philosophy of the hotel. And doesn't this make sense? And all of a sudden the employees go, oh, I get it. This makes sense. I like these guys. I like working here because, I get it. And you wind up having better guest experiences. Hey, you wind up with better TripAdvisor ratings. Hey, you got better ratings. Your ADR can go up.
Right. But that has to be explained and shared with the team. But make it clear too that this isn't. People often look at small B&Bs. One of their eclectic charms is you feel that you're more engaged with guest satisfaction because you're talking to the /owner or what have you, and that you represent a very large portion of their revenue for that day because there's so few rooms and you're in one of them, and so you feel like you have that attention level that you represent a value to that person. That oftentimes, unfortunately, tends to get diminished when you go to the Luxor or to the MGM in Vegas and you're one of 7,000 rooms arriving that day. You don't feel like you have that influence on that hotel to say, damn it, this is what I expected, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But people don't understand. I use this exercise when I speak at the conferences, and I know you've heard me say it before too, is that one person doesn't represent one person anymore. That one person represents hundreds, and when exponentially 1 and 2 tiers beyond them, tens of thousands of people are represented by that single entity. So hey, Stuart.
Hey, guys.
Oh, either you kicked Robert off or he just said, frickin' Stuart's here.
I offended him somehow. My apologies. I usually take a few minutes before I get offensive, but.
See, just you merely joining in has caused him to just step away. We were both standing on our soapbox hoppers. We threw out the bot conversation for Messenger, and then we tried to do the admonishment of saying, hey, look, so oftentimes we get asked about the shiny object, and we're prone to be chasing shiny objects anyway based on the nature of what we do. But it is no replacement to what a hotel should be doing fundamentally first before they start chasing these things down. And then we got off, and I got on the tangent of saying, it's like, look, something simple from a hotel operation point of view of creating protocols for your front desk to understand how to respond to certain events is critical. That they need to be built. That you need to tell the front desk how to react to certain levels and what diversity of choices they have and how to escalate it and who should be engaged. Right. And what I'm finding is that a lot of hotels either missed that, they didn't go to that day in the class of how to run a hotel, or that they didn't see the value of remembering. Because I get sometimes blank stares. They're like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. It's like, yeah, you got to build up protocols. What happens when this happens, and share that so that there's a consistency to your program. But anyway, that's catching kind of up to where we are right now. So, any thoughts on that?
No, I agree 100%. I mean, I think one of the biggest mistakes we see in hotel operations and what leads to angry customers and negative reviews are people making knee-jerk decisions or reactions or emotional reactions to a situation, which is why, honestly, I think the brands having brand standards and having protocols well detailed is an advantage over the independents. A lot of independents just overlook that. They don't see the importance of it until they're stuck with a really bad situation. Then they're like, oh, maybe we should have had a policy for that.
Yeah. We should have written that down last time. Yeah. No.
Sorry. And then they don't write it down this time. And then it happens again. They're like, oh, maybe we should have written it down that time.
But then you also have to look, let's use the airline industry for an example, lots of policies, right? Yeah. And you wind up with the ridiculous situation with United Airlines dragging the guy off the flight when literally all they did was they only offered up to $800 to get people to get bumped off a flight. Right. Now they made two mistakes. One is they boarded the passengers first when they were oversold, right? Well, and they weren't really oversold. They needed a deadheaded crew in, right? So it was one of these things where, yes, the deadheading crew and United is supposedly fixed these are policy. Oh, the deadheaded crews need at least 45 minutes before, or something's decided before the boarding process starts. Yeah, makes sense. And again, this is an airline. I mean, my mother was a stewardess for United Airlines, right? A long time ago. So this airline's been around for a long time, and they just kind of figured out this particular process. But then when they dragged it out, they only went to $800. And if they had gone to 900, 1,000, there would have been somebody who goes, okay, you hit my number, I'm good to go. And it would have avoided the entire scenario.
Robert, being in Texas, I'm going to bring up two Texas analogies that I've learned by living here. One is all hat, no cattle. Doesn't apply here. The other one is there's reins on every horse. It's how you run them that makes the horse go. And and what you're talking about is you can put a lot of policies in, but they turn constricted because they turn siloed. The deadhead crew didn't care. They had policies they were following which said, hey, we got to get somewhere from A to B, and it's our process as to how we get there. We have this prioritization. The ground crew had their policies.
Oh no! And in fairness to them, they had a plane full of people. They had a couple hundred people sitting, waiting to get back to Chicago. They're like, "Hey, we got to get a crew there to help out those 200 people, right?" So, they said, "Here's one guy standing in the way of that. It's him versus the 200 people. Get him." So
but that's the thing I'm saying is that policies were then constricted because everybody sit back going, "Hey, I follow my rules. You gave me a rule, I follow my rule." Where if you have loose reins, it's kind of like, hey, rules are meant to kind of keep us between one side to the other, but this isn't working for us right now. So we got to come up with something different because we're in a different scenario. Let's give a little latitude to the people that are in charge.
Right, and I think that's why everyone uses Zappos as an example of customer service all the time. We've heard it a million times. But one of the things that I really like that they do is they give every single person that answers the phone the latitude. They give them guidelines and they give them a budget, but they give them the freedom to make choices. So they're empowered. So they'll say, if a customer has an issue, you have a budget up to $200 or $500, whatever it is, to make it right. No questions.
Right.
And we're not going to give you a script. We're not going to tell you specifically how to fix the situation. Treat people like people and not treat them the way you want to be treated, but treat them the way they want to be treated at that time, given their situation.
And that, because of Amazon's acquisition of Zappos, is now permeated Amazon. And I really think Bezos, did that because of Tony Hsieh, their CEO. I think he saw him and said, I want what Zappos is doing to infect Amazon as a whole, and that is their and boy, talk about it. Actually, one quick thing on Amazon, I saw an amazing stat this week that Apple Computer, the first quarter, made $11 billion in profit or something. Big number. That's the total amount of profit Amazon has made. Or wait, what was it? It wasn't 11, but whatever the number was, right? It was a huge number of profit. That quarterly profit was double what Amazon has made in its entire existence.
Mm-hmm. Amazon is not built to make profit. They spend the profit on R&D. They get mad when you make too much profit.
No, what I was going to say is that when back in the days of running hotels, I used to tell my front desk, it's like the customer isn't always right, but we'll do what's always right for the customer. And the idea of it being is that from a front desk perspective, is understanding the real root of the problem. And it may not be what's being presented in front of them. It's what it is that's creating that. Like one other thing I mentioned, Stuart, before I jumped on is I said, anytime a problem comes up in this industry, it's really two problems. The problem that's in front of you and then getting it resolved, and the problem of getting it so it doesn't recreate itself in the future. Right. Well, how did this get created and how did we answer it? And can we fix it in the future so that this doesn't come back up to us? And like you're talking about, it's like industry amnesia. If they don't write it and they don't fix it, it's destined to repeat itself because they didn't remember what they did last time to write it down. So, yes.
Yeah, I have a role internally with my employees, and I tell everyone when they're hired to go through an orientation, I say, you're going to make mistakes. Because I really push our guys to be thinking. 60% of what they do needs to be outside of their comfort zone. Otherwise, we're not innovating fast enough with this technology, right? So I tell them, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to misspend clients' budget sometimes. You're going to screw up. You're going to piss people off, clients or employees. But when you do it, one, I want you to fix it, and two, I want you to never make that same mistake again. If you can do that thing, you can make all the mistakes you want. As long as you fix the problem that it caused and you never make the same mistake twice, we're good. So
and to take responsibility.
Yeah,
and to take responsibility.
They're responsible for fixing it, right? They're not going to get someone else to bail them out. They're going to take ownership of the problem that they created, and then they're going to learn. and
I wonder where, because you know what, that's amazingly sage advice for any business to run itself. Is like, hey, look, everybody's entitled to making the first mistake on anything. Just also take responsibility so it doesn't come a second time. It's brilliant advice. But somewhere along the line, good companies turn political, where all of a sudden it shifts from doing that, what exactly you said, that they may have started in that way, but they get to a certain size somewhere, that all of a sudden the prioritization is lack of culpability. How can I be engaged enough to take credit if it succeeds, but far enough away to not burn with it if it fails? You know what I mean?
That's right. Well, I think people get to that size. One, they have layers of management, right? Where some of the people really aren't doing a whole lot, but trying to look good by getting the other people to do the work. But I think you start losing ownership of whatever the project is. Doesn't matter how big or small it is. When you get to a certain size, now you got 7 people doing what 2 years ago was 1 or 2 people. That's I think when you run into that problem, because everyone starts acting as individuals.
And there was I think it was a famous Harvard Business School case. Could probably find it somewhere, but the way you operate a business when you're, the 1 or 2 people, the sole proprietorship or the partnership. You behave differently than once you hit that 5 to 7 employees. Then it kind of hits it somewhere around the 15 to 20, and you've got to suddenly start changing things because the process of it.
So when we see Stuart not show up, but his assistant shows up, and we see like this limo drive in the background off to the distance, we know that Stuart has hit a certain number of staff members.
I've got to get an assistant first before that.
But Lauren, that ties back into what you were saying about the hotel, the responsibility. I mean, how many times does a guest at even a 200-room hotel actually interact with the general manager of the property? I mean, general managers in a bunch of meetings, right? And just never out there, rarely sees a guest. And that's a bad situation. And you find the better run properties, all of a sudden the GM is spending 100%. More time in the front and doing things, not just sitting there with arms folded going, you did that wrong, do that faster. But they see, hey, it's backed up the desk. They step in. And
I gave a recommendation to one of my clients on how to do a shop for himself on his responses from his front desk. He was having inconsistencies and of course communication and keeping notes and everything else, the stuff we're talking about. So I recommended him, I says, put in one of your friends to the hotel that the staff does not know and have them come down to each shift with the same problem differently. And see if, one, your staff is communicating that this is a persistency with the same room, persistency with the same guest, whether there was the same consistent responses and follow-ups, what variations did they give, and so forth, and then can bring it back as a debrief to all the people that were engaged with it.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, because all of a sudden it's like nobody answered it the same way. Some people dismissed it and never answered it. Other people overcompensated for it. Nobody wrote a freaking note on anything, so it was coming back over and over from the same thing, where it could have been like, I see you've been down here before, Mr. Smith, with this. I'm terribly sorry this is happening a second time. Please let me bring my supervisor out. Let's discuss what can we do for you. None of that happened. But it did have a huge impact on how they move forward after that, because then the front desk really realized, damn, I think I do a great job, but no, I'm not communicating what I'm doing well with my teammates.
There's a product out there that called Tracking Care. It's kind of similar to a hot sauce, but one of the things I like about it is it tracks the guests throughout their stay on multiple stays, and it keeps like a sentiment gauge on every guest. So you can see at any given time what the happiness level of a guest is, right? So if they've had a small incident, they've maybe gone from happy to in between. But anytime someone interacts with a guest, they can pull that up, and everyone has that device. So they can see when there's an incident, okay, what has already happened with this guest? Do I need to go to extreme measures because they've already had some stuff go wrong? And that, to me...
I'm sorry, I interrupted you for a second. I'm sorry. I was going to say, if you remembered Saturn cars when they were out.
It's been a while, but yeah.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Please finish. I jumped in.
I was just going to say that thought of treating a guest like a person for their whole stay or their whole relationship with you over multiple stays, I really like that concept.
That's awesome.
It takes away the discreet dealing
Stuart
with
has hit
individuals.
something. Stuart has hit on something core to hospitality: treating guests like people. Okay,
it's
a revolutionary concept. Now he's turning things upside down.
I was bringing up the Saturn thing because Saturn cars, when they were in existence, they had a wonderful ad campaign on TV that ran that they actually would keep track of you as an individual with your car, that they kept track of what you were doing with your car and when you came in with it as service, so that no matter where you went, the service person would come out to know who you were, know what you were doing with your car, whether they were the repairs or whatever. And so the TV commercials were about that this one customer loved going in because it was free donuts in the repair places for Saturn. So later on, as the commercials went in, at the very end of it, it's like, such and such comes in, says there's a wobble in the front wheel, likes donuts, but it made a very good point. It personalized how you're reacting to them. It's one thing that we do the Four Seasons bingo card thing, where you recognize people by their name and acknowledge them. I mean, Four Seasons made that famous, but it's more so to remember the value of what they are by what the engagements were. So now the person's impressed with the fact that whether they talk to Susie Q or John or Bob or Bill or whatever, there's still times like, hey, Lauren, did everything go to the resolution about that whatever it is you asked us before? Then they know that you are communicating and you're really focused on their service. To your point, Stuart, treating people like people. Holy crap, what an innovation idea is that?
And that goes back to the GM being out and about on the floor, interacting with the guests. There's locally to us, there's a Marriott here, and the GM there is phenomenal. You would not know she was the GM because she is walking the floor all the time. If she sees something out, she's straightening it out. She's picking up trash. She's engaging with a guest. You would think she was any other employee. At any given time, she could be, the maid or the maintenance person because you just watch her. She's serving the guests. And all of her employees see her do that. So the culture in the whole property, and it's one of the best, most profitable Marriotts in the country, all of the staff are aligned behind this leader because she's a servant leader and she leads by example.
You made me feel good because I remember back one time I was turning a banquet room and I was rolling tables around and so forth for a group, and it was a real tight turn between two groups. And I'm huffing tables and rolling stacked chairs and so forth. And one of the reps of the group come up to me and she's like, your team... She's talking to me, and I'm thinking she knows who I am. She says, your team is just doing such a great job. Will you please let the general manager know that you guys are just working on and so forth and so on, blah, blah, blah. You've been doing the greatest. And what's your name? I would tell you, you guys are just working so hard. I'm like, yes, ma'am, I'll go make sure he knows. And I'm walking away.
He's a real ass, though. I rarely see him. All he does is just kind of berate me.
That little slacker, he's probably in his office drinking coffee right now. That son of a bitch doesn't help with nothing. He doesn't even know you're here. No, but then he goes over to one of my banquet captains. Like, will you please? I just told them, to tell the GM something. You guys are really working hard. She says, you just did. That's the GM. I'm like,
I wish there were more GMs like that for sure.
Yeah, but you know what it is? Your team. I used to say the team could do the impossible. Just took a little longer. We did crazy stuff that most places wouldn't have touched. But you know what? There's a confidence that everybody's going to jump off the cliff together, and with confidence that you're going to land on something soft. Because together, everybody could get everything done. So you're right. It creates that experience for the guest. A guest can walk into a hotel and know whether or not the team is worried about the guest or worried about their job.
Right.
And to your point, the GM being what they are, doing what they're doing, makes that culture. They are the linchpin of that whole operation is the culture they create. So yes, I agree with you 100% for it.
Yep. No, and that's, well, get out your bingo card. John Sharp, the former president of Four Seasons Hotels, used to hire GMs. And I think I've shared this story on the thing before, so apologies, Lauren, but Stuart probably hasn't heard it. But the way he'd hire a GM would be, the guy'd normally come in and go to the front desk, go, hi, I have a meeting in a hotel as opposed to the corporate office or something like that. And Sharp would always position himself, 10 minutes before the guy was going to arrive, on the opposite side of the hotel, like basically where he was going to go. Let's say they were going to go meet in a restaurant or something like that. He'd position himself down the stairs, wherever in the restaurant. They'd call the guys here. He'd come up the stairs and drop a little piece of paper on the path going back to the, back to the hotel or back to, whatever the meeting room or wherever office they were going to meet. And he would walk that prospect over that piece of paper. And if the guy didn't pick it up, now maybe he might get the job ultimately because he was great, but boy, big strike if you don't have that attention to detail, even though it's not your hotel and you just pick something up, you go, hey, that doesn't belong there, I should pick it up. That's the kind of guy. Now, although he had a problem with it, he couldn't do this in really well-run hotels because there would be someone who would, if it took too long, would pick it up.
It wouldn't hit the ground. It wouldn't hit the ground.
So that's but then he would use that as a story, saying, you know what, I did this, And here's the kind of person we're looking for is someone who can do that, because the guy who's leaving did that, and here's how this stuff runs.
I had one company that did a deep clean check where they bring in a GM prospect to see if they had the eye, and put them into a room that they purposely didn't do high cleaning on, high dust and low profile stuff, repetitive cleaning, misses and so forth, and go into the room and say, tell us what's wrong with this room. For them to see if they have that knowledge base that, because you don't know that stuff until you start cleaning rooms, what gets missed out of the hurriedness, because you have a list of what you're asking your housekeepers to perform, but there's also a deep clean list and there's also a high clean list. And I used to go with my housekeepers and I had 20, we'd do it as a surprise motivation thing where I had 20 $1 bills and we had 20-point inspection, and I'd hand over $21 bills to the housekeeper that we walked in, that she cleaned and ready the room. And it's like, okay. And then I would go in, and anything I found that she should have done that she didn't, she had to give me $1 back. Guaranteed. First person that went below $10, never let it happen again. And it would turn into a fun contest, But meanwhile, you go in and you have fun with the housekeepers, and you do bed races, where how fast can you set a bed compared to them? And of course, they smoke you every time, because there's no way you can keep up with somebody that does it.
It's amazing.
50 times a day, And so you get a big kick out of it, because you can't be too big. You can't create that much division. You get to walk in and hand out money and act like you know everything that's going on. You don't know everything that's going on. You're just a part of the machine.
Right.
And they got to appreciate that they're responsible and important too. So anyway,
but that's having a process. But that's having a process for, here's how you make a bed with a hospital corner or what. I mean, those sorts of things that need to get. And if you don't do that, all of a sudden, things start falling apart. One of the most brilliant things I saw after I left Force was I went to this little company, Journey's End, right? Budget motel chain. I mean, equivalent to kind of a Red Roof Inn, Hampton Inn type thing. But the EVP of operations was a freaking genius, because he knew there were all these little operational systems that had to get checked. It was a fluid level here and that. And when you're running a 60, 80 room hotel with 18 full-time equivalents or whatever, GM is kind of has to take care of everything. So he wound up putting these little tags on all these things, everything that had to be checked. And there were probably like 30 tags in the back of house of what you had to check. And he had, a regional operations person come through to do an inspection every month and kind of go through, meet with the GM, what's going on. That go through, well, you by God better have a date and initial on every one of those tags, because you went through and checked it. And you go, oh, really? Come on. You just tell him, no, they would do this. And his point was, well, then I know the person was standing there, sort of thing. They had to go sign the tag. It's right there. They might as well check it. Because, and maybe they ran through once and just did that. But again, they got caught on something, go, hey, it's signed, but it's not. The oil level's low. What the hell is going on? And all of a sudden, the process made it so, those hotels never had problems with those 30 things, which were all crap that could break and run up a bunch of, a bunch of cost and inconvenience guests and do all this stuff that you've got enough problems just trying to keep the guests happy, as opposed to this other, completely unnecessary, fully preventable stuff. And I thought it's genius, right? So he took that out, and yes, it took the general manager 15-20 minutes a month, maybe maybe half an hour to do that stuff. I mean, you just go, come on, what better investment could you get?
I threw in one of the article suggestions that I had up, and I put it up for a couple of reasons. Why I grabbed it out of the news for a couple of reasons. And since we've been pontificating so much, Mr. Robert, I'm going to let Mr. Stewart have a punch at this, because it's pretty self-evident, even in the title, if you hadn't looked at the article, that it's talking about repurposing buildings that weren't built for the original configuration of being a hotel, but are being customized to stuff. And just, I put it up for a couple of reasons, but any thoughts on just the initial impression of this trend coming through now? Like, okay, now this is getting strange that these things are being built.
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, I think novelty in the hospitality industry is underutilized, and having a unique value proposition is great. So I think I'm in favor of this trend. I don't know if the motivation for some people is always the same as mine, but a lot of people are like, well, millennials like this kind of weird stuff. But no, I think it's great from that perspective, and two, it's a way of increasing inventory in places where there's nowhere else to build. So
Right.
I think from those two perspectives, that I'm in favor of this. I want to go stay at an old fire station because I can pretend I'm a Ghostbuster, So it'd be great.
But down the pole.
Although, yeah, the 3-story fire pole may not make it through to the actual guest experience.
Well, just a huge disclaimer: you have to sign your life away before you jump on the pole.
Yeah. But this has been going on. It's not necessarily a trend. I mean, this, certainly you start off with, the boutique hotels and going back to the 80s sort of thing. I mean, Kimpton started doing this. They were redoing banks and all sorts of stuff to repurpose these things. And it's great. The crime is some of these hotels wind up in a major hotel portfolio, and it's getting a little bit now better. But you go through, whatever, call out Hilton or Marriott or these guys, they've got their generic websites. All the hotels look basically, and it completely misses. I can't remember. I think it's a Marriott in St. Louis, one of the original like Statler Hilton hotel, one of the few that's left. There's no mention of that history or who stayed there or some of the, really incredible things. That really make that hotel unique and interesting and give it some character. And it's just completely like, oh no, here's the brand, and that supersedes it, which has got to be reversed.
That's the problem with all the flags. And Hilton are making a huge push right now for their properties not to have independent websites. But we work with a few, because primarily our client base is 90% independents, but we have a handful of flags as well. And we got one, it's the only oceanfront Hampton Inn. And
there you go. Yep.
The corporate site has no mention of really it being oceanfront or any of the amenities. It's actually a really nice Hampton Inn. It's been fluctuating between number 1 and number 4 on TripAdvisor in its destination of over 200 properties. So it's a nice property, which way above what you would expect from a typical Hampton Inn, and it's oceanfront. So they had to create a unique landing page. And it ranks above the corporate page, but now Hilton is getting mad at them and saying, we're going to start penalizing you if you have this vanity website. So, that is a challenge that the flags, I think, are facing with these unique properties.
And to your point, and it is a very valid point, this homogenization of brand, it had its value when it was created. I mean, if you think about the life cycle of what we're looking at, where brand came into existence, the Howard Johnsons and the Holiday Inns being the first roadside consistent brand awareness. It went back from a time that you didn't have a lot of channels of communication as to understanding what was down the road, where the gas stations were, or even, that's where the AAA came into existence, because it gave you some methodology of determining your travel plans. It really created the world travel, or the U.S. traveling within itself. And so it had great value, because when you saw the brand, you saw it was consistent. You knew the type of product you were going to get. Now, as the pendulum swings the other way, communication outstrips homogeny. Now you can learn all those nuances of places well before you ever get there. So the surprise factor, the unpleasant surprise factor, is diminished to almost nothing, because unless they were totally untruthful, which still happens, most of the time you get a good perspective of what their product is. And you're willing, the first step of anybody from a travel experience as they've grown up is to get off of going to a brand. Brand was safe, convenient, consistent in pricing, and that's where you went. It was a big deal to get from going from a brand hotel to a independent hotel, because you took that leap of faith, like, I hope it's everything they say it is compared to what I know it is. And then to get into other variations past that point. So to your point, this now is brands are trying to become less homogenized with 35 flavors of everything and in brand cycle. And then you have now the next generation, which is saying, hey, look, because we can communicate everything we converted this really cool firehouse. And we converted this jail over here, which, interesting, unique, but, and so now you can begin to, and now when you add that to the new swell of, and I shared this statistic when I speak at Rocket, 78% of people would rather spend their money on experiential events than even owning a home. The American dream mentality, anchor, suburbia, home, car, white picket fence. I'd much rather enjoy my experiences in the world and forego having that if that's the cost that I have to pay. 78% of the people. That's major. So now we have the ability to have these experiences when we travel. And this is augmenting not just the destination, but your experience while you're at the destination. So to me, that's why I threw the article, was like, man, this is just to show you the pendulum is swinging, and brands see it. They know it, because that's why Hey, do you like this brand? Oh, hey, do you like this brand? Hey, do you like this brand? They're trying so many different things not to be a brand, but then they do stupid shit like you just said. Mm-hmm. Oh, but with the flag, this is our rules. You can't be this. You got to be like this with everybody else. It's in that sense.
And I'll call out Hilton. I just looked at the Tapestry is their newest brand, right? It's basically a soft brand and things like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, similar to Autograph Collection. But you look at Hotel Schuyler in Syracuse, and this thing, it was built as a synagogue. It used to house a theater troupe, has this, kind of great history. There's not really an unexpected, it starts out an unexpected find in Syracuse, New York, but it doesn't really, our lobby greets you with the industrial minimalism and soothing organic touches. Retro and metro mingle in our one-of-a-kind guest rooms that are as eclectic as they are comfortable. And you're just sitting there going, dear Lord, whoever wrote this has never been to the property. They probably haven't seen a picture of it. I mean, who the hell knows what they're, and you're like, what a completely wasted opportunity. It's also a LEED platinum building, which is pretty, and it does kind of say something, things like that. But and then of course the classic is they've got a nice prominent TripAdvisor thing, and again 4.5 circles on TripAdvisor, so that's good. 353 reviews. It was an independent hotel before it become one of these. And Da Buddy said, only if you're a sound sleeper, graduation weekend, $500 a night. I don't like giving a mediocre review to this hotel, but, and there's a great big long takedown of them. So, just you sit here and go, I see this picture with these, Grecian columns on the outside, and this looks very unique. And then you just go, the answer of why is the hotel like that or where it completely missed. And you just, it's insane.
Yeah. They don't do a good job of storytelling at a corporate level. And, like you said, they don't visit the property, but nor do they have real conversations with the people on the ground at the property, because they've got one person working on 50 properties in different regions.
I got to tell you this, what I got told. I was having a fun conversation over barbecue the other day. And this is what I got told. And this is one thing I got to love about Texas. I know I'm harping on Texas thing right now, but this is just funny how this is somebody who's been born and bred in Texas, and this is how they talked about brands compared to independent hotels. I love it. I'm not going to give them their name, but they said brand hotels is like your best friend that's trying to be your wingman to talk you up to a girl, but he wants to keep it in the wings that he can always get the girl later. So he only tells you so much, tells her so much about you, so that if you don't like just him, you'll like me. It's so true. I'm laughing my head, but I was talking to this guy. It's so true. It's like brands will sell you, but they never completely sell, because they're like, hey, but if you don't like that one hotel, remember, I got lots of friends. You want to stay with me as a brand, I just thought it was so funny. He's talking about, it's like, it's so true. It's like they're talking you up, but they're not really selling you the whole deal, because they're keeping you in the wings for themselves. I threw another link up there, and this comes from the recent Honolulu. I never been in a market. I'll be honest with you. This is what caught my eye with stuff. I've never been in a market where Airbnb was such an active advertiser, participant, and advocate as it was when I was in the Hawaiian market, because there was some legislation going through statewide about the taxation that they're going to inflict upon Airbnb. And you had a lot of advertisement talking about how Airbnb was taking away local residences because the local owners of those residences were not wishing to do annual rentals at a lower rate per month when they can get astronomically higher monthly rates most of the year. Yeah. And so there was that. And then Airbnb would pop up this kind of article, which is talking about hotels are against the industry. They're trying to exploit the middleman, but we're trying to give you quality, And I was like,
propaganda war.
Wow. I was in a little microcosm there, So anyway, I didn't know if you guys had any thoughts on this one.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about this a lot on our podcast. Misha, who's one of my coworkers, her mom lives down in New Orleans, and the same exact problem's happening there. The cost of renting has skyrocketed, and you cannot find anything in the city proper anymore because all the annual rentals have switched over to Airbnbs. So this is happening in a lot of major cities.
Los Angeles, San Francisco, all major urban areas.
Yeah, and it's a problem. And I think what we see is, you've got the establishment, the traditional hoteliers that are calling foul that the rules are stacked against them, and the Airbnb has a very unfair advantage. And then you've got these new guys coming in and not really understanding the industry and whining anytime anything happens to them that doesn't seem fair from their perspective. So we're going to continue to see this back and forth propaganda war, I think, for until some real legislation passes, which is inevitable, I think.
Well, and the reality is that I think the AHLA has just messed up so many times with Airbnb. I mean, just like they're in the batting cage and they aren't even making contact, sort of thing. And it has been since the beginning, because I spoke to them early, or at a conference, and just kind of said, hey, don't do this fear and kill it with fire thing. You guys should be out there embracing. You are the American. It's actually AH and Lodging, Hotel and Lodging Association. That was it. This is lodging. You should be setting up training programs and all. But again, AHLA gets their money from the brands. This is a bit, not good for brands, sort of thing.
I think it's a big trend in all industry representation right now is that, and I made this comment before, businesses and between air and revenue, it's Maslow's first requirement. If you don't have air, you can't worry about anything else. And if a company doesn't have revenue, you can't worry about anything else. Problem is, once you get enough air, you know what you want to do next. Problems with the business, they don't know when they have enough revenue to know what to do next. And so these industry recommendations, they follow the money first. And unfortunately, that means there's a filter between what they do versus what they're being allowed to do, because in order to get the money, there's a price to it. They just don't hand you money saying, hey, you guys are doing a great job. Here's some money. Keep on doing it. They're like, no, we'll give you this money, but don't talk about this, talk about that. Or, you know what, we'd really like it if you would share our opinion about this. And it's going to be the demise of representation of our industry if we keep letting that be the first filter. And
it's based on basically support the hotel industry, because the hotel industry, employs a lot of people and things like that. It's like people don't care about that. The point has always been with Airbnb.
We don't have to worry.
But Airbnb since day one has been about affordable housing, right? That is the topic that is the stake through the heart of Airbnb, because you go, wait a second, this doesn't make any sense. We want to have, and the American Hotel and Lodging Association should be saying, we want the people who work in our hotels to be able to live in the neighborhoods and to do this and to be part of it and not be priced out of this, because again, H&LA doesn't want to raise the minimum wage, sort of thing. It's like, well, if they can't afford to live, you better give them a living wage. And, so it's a problem. So, these messages have to be somewhat consistent.
But you mentioned that living next to the hotel. I was having a conversation with a friend that just got into a new position, and they're taking over some hotels in Key West. And I was trying to explain, because I used to live down there and run hotels down there, the unique labor market down there, that they actually had to pass an ordinance that no more than 30 people could live in a 2-bedroom home. And you would think, well, that seems ludicrous. But what happens is that the people that work at the hotels down there, they don't live down there. They have to take a bus from Florida City and everybody else on the mainland down. They go in 5-day cycles. And these guys are exploiting this labor force, or have bought a home, put bunk beds in it. And for 4 or 5 days, you're rotated between bunk beds, while you work at the hotels. And also, and it's true, you can get caught stealing at a hotel, get fired for it, walk across the street and get rehired, because they can't be very discriminating about who they're getting in. And that reflects on service and everything else, because down in there, the hotels, they're kind of like, hey, if you don't like it, get out of line, because there's somebody right behind us. So there's this machine that's down there. And I was just trying to give them a little insight to it, that it's a different world down there for that. But to your point, if you can't afford to live near where you work, you're less likely to work there, which means you have a diminished labor force. So, yes. Yeah.
Myrtle Beach is the same way. I mean, my hometown, it's, they ship people in from Georgetown, which is a 45, 50-minute bus ride at least, and they're busing hundreds and hundreds of people in for the housekeeping and maintenance jobs, stuff like that. There's just not the housing around the Myrtle Beach area that they can afford.
Yes, and it's a shame, and that's to your point. That down in Southwest Florida, we're moving to in a couple months again, back down to people that work in Naples don't live in Naples. They live in fringes that are ever expanding radius, because it's getting more and more expensive. So I think it is a persistent problem in some of the higher density affluent places and tourist destinations. Hey, I throw in keep our pace going with this, which is kind of fun. This one I just threw in just because I thought it was interesting that this has been a complaint of mine with GDS for a long time. You have to fall under a nest of code. you can't be yourself because you'll never get found even if you wanted to. But now it seems that hotel residents are beginning to offer private label GDSing change code solutions, which I thought was interesting because it should create a different diversification. GDS is a platform of discovery sucks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, unless you have the right code for the right cluster, which usually is brand-based or soft brand-based, very little. Or you have to pay your way up the top with Spotlight.
Yeah, like Spotlight,
Yeah, to get in front of the people that use GDS, your travel agents and so forth. And I thought this was kind of interesting. That this was new mix to the process. I don't know if you guys had any alternate opinion to it, or whether it's just like, okay, it's inevitable.
Yeah, I don't really have an opinion.
I don't like GDS. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. I'm not doing this to go, let's go GDS. It's like, no, I mean, it's a channel I try to.
No, GDS is, hey. Don't slam the GDS.
That was back there making the cogs and the. Were you the guy that made that little cog that they found in the Aegean Sea that used to tell us when there was eclipses? Were you back then?
That's right. I want you to know what's now the Spotlight program. That was my little product at Sabre. Those contextual ads on a green screen of a travel agent's computer.
I walked in a minefield. I got to step back out. Can't hit a line, man. Robert was one of the creators of Spotlight on my favorite platform, GDS.
No, okay, but here's what GDS does. Okay, that other folks don't do. Number one is the booking fee, right? It's a flat, let's just call it $5 a booking. That's a relatively low distribution cost for given everything else. Again, predominantly to travel agencies, right? Sabre.
Clarify where that charge goes. There's $18 to $22 for the hotelier.
Well, yeah, but that's not the GDS. Okay, that's not the GDS's fee.
It's not the bullet; it's the gun. I swear.
Well, no, but you got to look at the whole. Everything that was built around that is quite different. But the GDSs do a couple of things, and again, I built a couple of them. So one is in terms of the defined viewership and the mapping of a particular rate code across a variety of distribution channels. So I'll use the original one that I'll use the case that we used to do it. There used to be what's now Accenture, used to be Arthur Andersen Consulting. And way back in the late 90s, there was kind of a problem. Because if a hotel would say, yes, they had to tell people that MC was the 2-letter chain code, things like that for Marriott, right? Which wasn't the best one, but it's only 2 characters. This is a very old 1970s technology. I mean, you got like 2 bits and that's it, sort of thing. All caps, no lowercase letters, 6-bit operating system, right? Very, very limited. So you go back. Well, if let's say it was Hilton, they used AND.
It's still just 2. There's not a lot there.
It is. No. Hey, okay.
You're not making a solid case here, Robert.
Lauren, would you okay, I'll give you a month to come up with a system. You have an unlimited budget. Okay. I'll give you 2 years. I'll give you 2 years. I'll give you 2 years with an unlimited budget and see if you can build something that transacts 128,000 or 120,000 transactions a second and blows Six Sigma away. Because that is the reliability of these.
Well, I want to apologize for picking on your GDS. I sincerely apologize.
Okay, but here's what the problem was, and why it's still such an important part of the ecosystem. So Hilton, it was AND, right? That was the 3-letter corporate, rate plan code that you had to do if you're Arthur Andersen Consulting. Marriott used ART. Oh, so that's kind of a problem. And then Intercontinental used AAC for Arthur Andersen Consulting. There are 3 different ones. If you're sitting there at Andersen trying to book a hotel, right, you would have to go search each one of those with the different codes and do that. And this defined viewership functionality basically said, oh, I'm Arthur Andersen. I'm validated this, and here's my whole network of who can book my stuff. And it could be an in-plant travel agency over here, something else. These are the guys who have access to my rate code that they're validated for, and this is where it's eligible for across all these hotels. And nobody else really has that. Everything else is completely like these little individual channels, and even things like an when Ed built Easy Yield and things like that. Yeah, that was okay, but it didn't do the live mapping where you just go pow, right?
So, point, bows and arrows still kill people. I understand. We're good. Okay.
No,
now.
No. But GDS for the corporate market, absolutely.
GDS does have value.
I think it's certainly less than it was. I mean, that the internet changed a lot. A lot of our independent hotels have just developed individual relationships with the people that were actually sending them business.
Right.
Come straight to their website. They can put in an IATA number or hit URL, and they're booking direct now. They don't.
But what I just posted with the meta search, it does add to the fact that there's another means of getting in front of channels of distribution that GDS is now.
And Concur has been doing a very, very good job of replicating that and putting that on newer platforms. And that is a problem for the GDSs. Their whole direct booking, approach is absolutely the right way to do it. They're part of, SAS now. Yeah, they got some really good back.
They're expanding.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, no, and that's really, really very smart. But aside from those guys, those two, nobody else really does that. And it's funny. It's the same reason the airlines. You look at American Airlines, they want direct, come book with us direct and things like that. Mm-hmm. They don't really want that. They want Expedia to book direct so they can avoid the GDS fee. They don't want everybody else. They want them to go through a GDS because it's cheaper for them, right? Mm-hmm. So for kind of the unwashed masses, the problem with the GDS was the reason I left Sabre. They abandoned the hotel industry strategically in 1999. Because we had a very, very solid strategic plan that made hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue at 25% profit margins, and they just said no, they weren't in for hotels, and that's it. And they're still, 20 years later, even what they've done with Synixis and all these acquisitions and cobbled them together, gotten nowhere close to what they should have done back in the late 90s when there was a good window to really change the thing. So
I'm going to, like I said, I put that in there for people to have as a reference, looking back on the show notes when they play the recording back if they hadn't already looked at it while they're live. It's a great breakdown of the value proposition of each of the platforms, TripAdvisor, a Hotel Finder, on and on and on. And to your point, Robert, the boil down of it is what gets you in front of your potential guests. And because of the medium that they're using to do so, and is easy for that guest to use, right? Because again, those large TMCs like American Express survives off of Sabre, and probably a fifth of Sabre's traffic is probably American Express, right? When just looking, Expedia is pretty big now too, but again, when you're looking at TMC, to your earliest point, if you actually could build a better platform, none of them would stay to where they are right now, because the deficiency in the GDS program is its age and its limitations compared to other platforms of experience. So if somebody could build a better mousetrap, everybody would leave it.
But they can't is the problem, because again, this is integrating itineraries for someone traveling through a travel agent who's but they're integrating air, hotel, car, other sorts of itineraries too. They're putting it through, back office accounting. They have allocations that go out to what these accounts are. There's a lot of stuff in there.
I would say safely there are those who are looking to displace the GDS to GDN, Global Distribution Network. And I'll tell you specifically, Microsoft is working on that, where they're trying to say, look, once you plug to the platform, everybody that's plugged to that platform should be accessible to you by a selection, just whatever you choose. Hey, if I'm a hotel in Bolivia and I want to try to get business from Brussels, I can plug into what channel is necessary for me to communicate to people in Brussels. And that is the difference between distribution system and distribution network.
Right.
So I think there is some people that are trying to crack that nut.
Oh no, there are
successful, or whether or not
there are, but the success of that has a couple of but it has a technical issue, which is a problem, and then it has the whole scale issue of getting everybody onto that platform.
Right. But that's
the problem.
Because if it does what it's supposed to do and gets exposed for as such, then people will move themselves. You don't have to move people. If they're aware that this is a better alternative for them, they're going to move themselves for it. It's not selling them to get on. But anyway,
but that was also the strategy in 1990 behind Thisco. right? Get away from the GDS.
Too, but
yeah, but again, that, and it got to a certain extent, and then it went away because, again, when I was at Sabre, what did we do? We saw this go as a risk in the mid 90s, late 90s, and we started doing direct connects. I did the first direct connects into Marriott and Hilton and all those sorts of things, and we cut that intermediary out because, again, we were losing contact with our customer, right? And that was a bad situation. So, but anyway, but the GDSs aren't going anywhere soon because
they're not going to go anywhere. But
if Sabre's doing $2 billion, they're probably doing more than that. At least Sunset TPF. What's their next target? It's freaking Marriott, because Marriott has TPF. So then, does that become more of a resurgence of the GDS when they start doing that?
All right. Before we run out of time with it, I want to make sure we throw Holly's. But first off, for those with the metasearch link is for information. Really, it's more fact find usability. Like, hey, this. See, I pissed Robert off. He's gone.
Don't diss the GDS, man.
Do not mess with the GDS when Robert's on the show, because he will light up and kick your ass.
You know what? I've seen people get passionate about stuff. I've never seen people get that passionate about the GDS.
Yeah, that was Robert was the man on that one. All right. Well, until Robert decides that he wants to join, Holly gave us a great topic, which was kind of interesting. She popped it up last night. And that was a USA Herald article, which is in the link on the chat window off to the side, about how Google was getting tricked. I don't know if you had a chance to take a look at it, Stuart. But
I haven't seen it. Give me the short version.
The basic lowdown of it is that this law firm was beginning to petition Google on taking off bad content about their clients, saying that it was erroneous, fake news, blah, blah, blah. They're beginning to use all the levers and pulls about being able to quantify content that was related to their clients, and Google was beginning to systematically remove and change what it was that was what they were allowing to represent the clients. Now, of course, in the process of it, Google doesn't know the law firm is doing this. They're representing them, so it's as if if the content is saying, "Hey, look, this is not correct. This negative thing isn't correct. This is not correct. This is not us. Whatever." They started allowing Google it was an automated process they were using, was beginning to clear up content for their clients. So there was a suit that was put against the law firm that was doing this. That from, I forget who it was. Sorry, now I have to open up the articles to who did that. But they were sued, saying, "Hey, look, you're doing unfair practices. You're leveraging a system that's not being built for that purpose." So they got sued. State Attorney's Office was doing it, I think. No. Yeah. State Attorney's Office, I think, is doing it for the Arizona attorney that was doing this for their clients. It was they were advertising themselves as being able to take on online defamation litigation, get things taken off from disparaging negative comments. This was their sales pitches that they were saying, we can do this. We can take off the Yelp stuff. We can take off the comment, the feedbacks. We can petition these things to be removed. And that's what they're doing. So they're now being sued that they were doing illegal practices.
Wow. I wish I'd read that article now. I'm going to go read it. But that's
well,
that's phenomenal.
The question of it is, what else is Google getting tricked by? I mean, if this is just now surfacing.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I didn't know that was something that was even possible. I mean, that Google is such a siloed black box, or a stream of siloed black boxes that do not communicate. And it is almost impossible to get someone to arbitrate anything that is not, a paid service. To even get someone on the phone is next to impossible. So whether that's AdWords, ad infringements, trademark infringements, stuff like that, it is painstaking to get anyone from Google to do anything. And you certainly can't talk to your rep from AdWords to get them to do anything on a different product. Google doesn't do that. So that they found this loophole, I mean, I think I would still want to hire the law firm. Ethics aside, I think they're obviously very smart at what they do, and they're going to bend over backwards for their clients. So if I was in trouble, they might be someone I would want to call. But I think in general, when it comes to Google, sooner or later, if you try to game them in any way, it's going to bite you in the butt. And we've seen it again and again where people have tried, they found some kind of loophole. Typically it's to game the system to get higher ranking, is not to torpedo someone else. But there have been cases in the past where people have been caught, sending bad links to their competition to try to torpedo them, that's a practice that can be effective, or at one point could be effective. But Google is always a step ahead. Like, the only thing you can do with Google is to understand their motivation. What is Google trying to do? They're trying to match up a search intent of an individual person with the best, most relevant content for that person's search query, right? That's what they're trying to do at the end of the day. If you follow that logic, you're going to be fine. Provide the best content, that's most relevant to your consumer, and you're going to be successful with Google.
Robert, do you forgive us for attacking your GDS? I mean, we're sorry.
I did. I was so mad I had to just take it.
Had a little hissy fit and came back.
No. I actually wound up my network accessible source started to do a backup on my thing here, which was just destroyed my best. So I couldn't really say goodbye. I had to kind of take things care of, somewhat immediately, because things were happening at about 150 megabits a second, which was kind of, for some reason, conflicting with the bandwidth here.
That's as fast as the GDS.
Yeah. Well, there. Yeah, so, Robert, we brought in Holly's article. I don't know whether you were hearing us in the background while we're doing
this. Is it possible to trick Google?
Yeah.
Of course, you can trick them until they trick you back.
Right. Well, that's
you're being tricked.
It'll always come and bite you in the ass later if you try to do this spoofing of them and stuff. But, in all fairness, my mixed bag with this, and I agree with you, sir. First, when you said, hey, I'd hire this law firm, no, some people go over and say, whoa, they're doing something illegal. No, they're not doing something illegal. Well, there may be aspects that we don't know yet, but the premise of trying to clean up your reputation online is not illegal. As a matter of fact, we get asked to do that from a consultancy regularly. It's like, hey, some of the more naive questions, like, look, I got a lot of bad reviews. I need them taken off. They're not going to be taken off unless they're false. Okay, if they're false or they're about somebody else and it's not you and you're getting false, then maybe there's a recourse. But most of the time, it's first way to solve that stuff is fix the problems that they're bitching about and show that you resolve them. Yeah. That's going to take them off.
Get better reviews by having better
reviews.
I always thought I'd hire timpeter.com and he'd send some of his cousins from Jersey over to visit their families and have them reconsider.
Hey, what are you doing here? Stuff about my client.
Have them reconsider and perhaps edit their reviews slightly. I don't know.
We'd like for you to write the following words verbatim. But no, the idea of it is that you never want, especially if it spirals out, if it dead spins, and you can't control you can't get ahead of the conversation. There is a cleanup that has to. There is crisis modes, and you should, as a word of caution to those who listen, you should have a crisis social management program in place, a protocol that says if something does happen, first suspend all your automated scheduled stuff, because nothing looks worse than something tragic happened at this hotel and you're saying it's sunny and 72.
Right.
First get people off your account, so only the official voice spokesperson for the crisis committee or crisis team is the only one that can authorize any messaging that goes out. But two, with that point, active monitoring process of communications that you're involved with to know what is going on about what's being said about your product, so that you look like you're actively engaged in the dialogue, not letting it free fall. But again, that's something, and for those who listen, hey, Stuart's a person that you want to talk to about this, because their company knows very much about how to do this. But because it's any good agency has those conversations. Any good agency that handles social has those conversations with their clients as to, hey, what is your program with this? How are you handling this? Who's the ultimate authority when this happens? But that said, there is methodologies of processes that can improve your content. Other than just the guest improvement, how do you use that information to begin to balance out the negative that it reflects? How do you introduce it into the market? How do you just don't shove it out there, and you certainly don't ignore what negatively is being said about you. What messaging do you do? Is a crafted process. So to that end, regardless of whether this legal law firm was touting themselves as being able to rip it off the headlines or not, the process of improving your presence online, your consumer advocacy of yourself is a very legitimate real world concern that didn't happen 10 years ago. Nobody cared 10 years ago. It didn't exist 10 years ago. So, all right. Anything else about that one? I mean,
no. I mean, I think it's great that they were able to do it. I think that's very clever, but it's not going to be something everyone else could. Because when we read articles like that, everyone's like, "Well, how do I do that? That sounds really good." Reality is you can't. Right? Google is always going to bite you in the butt at some point. you can't remove other people's listings in any effective way that's not going to get you in trouble. What you can do is create more great content that is going to supersede that negative content. And that's the approach we typically take.
Or you do what Lauren and I were at the Hotel Data Conference a couple of years ago, and a hotel consultant who will go unnamed, not necessarily one of my favorites. Somebody brought up what happens when I get bad reviews? He says you just create like 10 every time you get a bad review. So basically, review spam was his solution. It was like, no, I don't think that's good.
Because people get lazy and sloppy, and they'll start doing it all from the same IP address, or people that just created their account as the first ever review, and you're going to get dinged by TripAdvisor in that case.
Or they pay a bunch of money to get, they pay a bunch of money to a real black hat organization that has their little sock puppets that have been established since 2004.
Going out to Fiverr and just hiring people for responses like no. But again, to a point, you don't know what the world's like until you're sitting in that chair. If you've ever been in that world where there was a free fall bad spin about your company that you weren't in front of, and you were just seeing, it is a gut-wrenching, it's terrible. I've been working with clients that I walk into that scenario and I feel terrible, let alone how they feel, because they feel most of it's not true, most of it's free fall, most of it's reactionary to reactionary to reactionary, and they're asking, where do you shut this off? How do I pull the plane up before it crashes,
Yeah, we've had to deal with a few. We've had a couple of I laugh, I shouldn't laugh. We've had a couple of shootings at some of our hotels. We had one where there was a double murder and they didn't find the body until the housekeeper had gone in and cleaned the room.
Yeah.
Didn't find the bodies. And then somehow they found out there had been a murder, and the police actually came in and found out that they'd put the bodies inside under the bed. So easily another couple
in the body. So they hit them. They pick up the mattress, threw them inside under the box,
put them in the frame, put the mattress back on. Right. So we had a couple of just terrible situations like that, and it's easy to think you know what to do in that situation, but unless you have a protocol that prevents you from knee jerking and making bad steps, because a lot of times you can shine a light on something that negative and draw a lot more attention to it from people that didn't know about it, right? So you got to be first that you're not making the situation worse before you try to make it better, right? So it's.
I think you described one of Tim Peters' cleaning up of bad reviews events. I mean,
when he invites the guests back to the hotel to have another stay, and they have another bad review, you wind up in the frame.
We had another situation. This wasn't nearly as catastrophic, but we had someone had written an article on their blog about this property, and it's a nice property, 4-star property, and very high ADR. And they wrote an article about experiencing bed bugs. Unsubstantiated.
Right.
Very, very risky claim, right? And but the problem is, this person's blog had a lot of Google authority, so it was ranking to the point that it was coming up in the top on the first page for the brand term, and then enough people started searching property name bed bugs that it became a Google suggest. So now anyone that started typing in the brand name, one of the top 3 suggestions that would drop down was this property bed bugs. So now all these people that weren't even thinking about bed bugs were not only seeing it on the SERP, but getting told, you should probably search that, and then you'll find in other reviews that mention it. So it took us a while to deal with that. It wasn't like an emergent situation where we had to deal with it right then, so we came up with a strategy, but it took us a while we had to ended up having to create a ton of content that was positive, that included the brand name and bed bugs, like their reclamation policies, their cleaning policies, all this stuff they do to prevent bed bugs. And that ended up taking over. So when you search for that stuff, that's what showed up. But every situation is unique. You just sometimes need to stop.
I think it's only second to identity theft and the gut wrenchingness that it can create, because you're losing it. It's kind of funny. Again, I talk to weird people that have weird analogies, but it's like Matrix. Why did the person who died in their mind physically die? It's like, well, online, if you lose your social reputation for your company and somebody hijacks your identity and can affect your real world of money and everything else by cleaning your accounts out, the virtual world did affect your real world. You're still sitting in the same house you did 5 minutes ago, but 5 minutes later, you're not that person online anymore. Your money's gone and your reputation is destroyed. And so your business, your clients leave. And you're sitting there going, I didn't leave the room, but my world has fundamentally changed. So, yeah, this is about the very real presence that these things do count financially. I mean, we know it every day that 1-star increases. I mean, I think, sir, you had that. Or Robert, you might have that. What's the stat? 1-star increase on a review does how much business increase or something? There's something.
Yeah, I mean, substantial. You can claim higher ADI.
The fundamental value equation.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, the fundamental value equation is that guests wind up looking at how many dollars per star do they pay is kind of the ratio, right? Because they go, wow, if I can get a 5-star hotel for $50, and that's a great ratio, sort of thing. Well, and actually, it's the quality of the hotel, so the stars, and then the guest rating, and everybody has a slightly different formula. But yeah, the higher, if you have your set rate, it doesn't matter if you're $200 a night, and your competitors don't have as high a review rating, they don't have as high a quality rating, you're going to get that business. It's a fundamental. Yeah, a little quick math.
As usual, we have more content than we have time. Stuart, I don't know how much time you have to be able to stay with us today.
Yeah, through the long haul, I think.
Okay, good. The one I just threw up there, Robert had a whole Pandora's box of additional ones. This was one of the ones I grabbed that after I had sent out the suggested topics, because I had referred to Google's announcements and so forth. From a personal level, I've been playing with Google Assistant to get better at it, because I think, as well as Amazon is entrenched, I think that Google, and to what we always applaud Google for, is going to take what's being done and make it better. And so maybe not now, the Assistant isn't what it could be now in comparison to Amazon's Echo, but I think in the future the footprint of it is such that it has the chance of becoming ahead of what Amazon is currently, because Amazon has to enter into a new market to be where Google already is in the market, only entering into what Amazon is in. So,
and you're saying, home versus Echo, but Google Assistant's on.
Google Assistant. And it doesn't really work all as good as I would hope, but they're adding a lot of new cool stuff to the Home Assistant program. It's getting integrated a lot more with platforms in a much more accelerated way. One of the reasons I got it, because it interacts with my security system now, which is cool. So I can just tell it to turn things on and lock and what have you, which it didn't. Only the Echo did up to this point. So it's taking on the value proposition pretty well. But its functionality, its depth of question answers, and I'm sad to say, and I'm an Apple fan, Apple's got to get its crap together soon, because Siri is the dog in this right now.
I'm really surprised they don't have an in-home device yet. There's no doubt Google's product ultimately will probably be superior. The research they're doing on AI and natural language processing and search is way superior to anyone else. So they're probably going to have a superior product. But Amazon is getting so entrenched in the home with the penetration of Echo at this point. They're just releasing 2 new products with the Echo Show and the Echo Look, which to me solve a lot of problems and limitations of the current Echo.
Yes.
And if they get such a penetration level, this could be Betamax versus VHS all over again, where the superior product loses out because one guy just got there first and got a better traction,
Yeah. No, you're right. First wins and something. And to the point, I think it's a matter of the usability of it. My only thing that Amazon is behind on is it's trying to expand past it being in the home. Because up to this point, you're right, it dominates the home space. But once you leave the home, it's on the phone, its relevant value proposition is very minor. You're not really, the value isn't there as much. Yeah. Where Google outside the home has the dominance because of its full reaching spectrum of what it does already. Yeah. But to that point, what are you trying to win? And right now, Amazon's in the place that Google's trying to win.
I've seen a couple of times recently, Amazon said that they want to replace the home phone, which, they're obviously going in that direction with the new messaging capabilities they just released. So that I don't see average consumers that are going to adopt this and early adopters already picked it up. The masses are beginning to pick up Echo products. Over the next couple of years, they're going to get critical mass. These aren't the kind of consumers that are going to double down on that technology and reinvest in a different technology in a year or 2 or 3. So that's why I feel like Amazon has a huge advantage right now. But they've got to get mobile. They've got to get on every device.
Yeah, they got to get outside the hoop. Go ahead, Robert. I'm sorry.
And they've got 51% of the households in the U.S. have Amazon Prime accounts now. I mean, it's absolutely, that's huge. Yeah. And they're giving, they're reportedly discounting some prices if you purchase it through your Echo compared to if it's on Amazon's, core site and things like that.
And they're forcing which products show. It's not the same.
That's right. Yeah, basics are getting prioritized. So they're doing.
Manipulating.
Did anybody see this the way I saw it last night? Is that on the news they announced Amazon Bookstore in New York?
Yeah.
Brick and mortar. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. That isn't their first one. That's like the third.
No, it's the seventh. It's the seventh. Their seventh one. Yeah. And I thought if anybody from Barnes and Noble was watching that on the news, if anybody, you should have looked at it and said, "That's what we didn't do right. That's what we need to do now if we want to exist." Because what she said when they were interviewing, I don't know if you all saw the same interview I had. She went over and said, "This isn't a bookstore. Right. This is a chance to expose product to people for them to realize what options they have." Because what they realized was the limitation of when you're looking at books on Amazon, you have your little preview views. I love bookstores to thumb through books and to look at the topic. I look over and I didn't know about that. Pyramids of Egypt explained. I wasn't looking for it, but hey, I'll peek at the book. It was that exposure of product that you wouldn't be. And they may or may not buy in the bookstore, but they
don't care. They're going to buy it online. They don't care. Right. The other thing they're doing is really cool is leveraging the online data for the store. So they're looking at trends and geographic purchasing and a lot of things. And they're organizing the bookstore not like a traditional bookstore. They're organizing it like they do online, which is much more user friendly.
Instead of organizing it that, hey, we have this contract with this book purveyor, so we have to distribute to all of our Barnes and Nobles and equal is fair whether they're interested in it or not. It's like, no, we're not going to show books in a region, to your point, that those people have no interest in. We're going to show books that they are interested in. But I'm sorry, Robert, you were going to say something.
Well, or their predictive analytics say, here's a new book from this author that people are going to love, so we put this, or here, various reasons. But they're also displaying the books with the jacket out, so you don't just see the spine, which is so much more customer friendly. But again, if you're selling everything in the books in the store and that's your only venue, that's not it. Well, they have Amazon as the longest tail online. They got freaking everything. So they're doing interesting stuff. And the reality is 90% of goods are still bought in real life in stores and things like that, not online. And Amazon is doing that because, mark my words, they've got this store. They're doing a lot of experimentation. They're also doing their little grab and go grocery stores where there's no checkout process. You just take your stuff and go. The interesting thing, there's an interview last week with Jeff Bezos, and they're talking about quarterly results and things like that. But he said, whatever, second quarter is looking pretty good. Because quite frankly, our second quarter of 2017 was set up about 3 years ago. We pretty much knew what it was going to be. So their planning cycles are so far out in front of this stuff.
But do you think about the technology combinations? We started this whole show with the shiny object versus doing the practical right. Amazon, and whether people who watch the show know this or not, has a little wonderful camera on the mobile function that all you do is hit that little camera and you aim it at something and it identifies what you're looking at. And then shows you in the Amazon store whether you can buy it or not. That whole bookstore, the whole Amazon store, maybe you're caught between grocery store and home or whatever, and you went in the bookstore because you had a few minutes to kill. You don't want to lug a book with you, or even if you're not certain about buying a book, but you can go over and look at the book. It catches your eye because you didn't even know you were looking for it. You do the little scan with the Amazon app. It identifies the book. You throw it into my list, so I don't lose track that I'm interested in this book. And then you walk out of the store, maybe that evening, maybe a week later or whatever, you go back, look at your list and go, oh, yeah, that was a pretty cool book. Let me peek it. Yeah, let's just buy it. Boom. Where Barnes & Noble doesn't do any of that stuff.
Right. And you probably hit with 20 ads for that book in the meantime because they know who you are and what you looked at.
Yeah. So to me, it's like, wow. This like I said, I hope that people at Barnes & Noble, hopefully not too late because you always want competition in market, but to niche themselves out to uniqueness, because they still have the massive footprint diversity. They still. I mean, there's only 7 Amazon bookstores, even though they're globally distributed. But the impact is only in 7 markets right now, where Barnes and Noble can make immediate impacts in their current market if they were to just think through some of the changes in this methodology this represents now. But I was like, wow, that's such a good way of doing it, you know?
I've got one thing you said about, showing the picture and identifying things. Hot tip for the week. Now, again, I don't have an iPhone, so I can't use it. But have you guys used Not Hot Dog by Seafood Technologies?
No, I have not.
No.
You don't watch Silicon Valley on HBO, do you?
I do not get to watch Silicon Valley on HBO.
You need to. It is a great show. I think they're in their 3rd or 4th season, whatever it is, but it's about startups and all the crazy things that go on. Outstanding cast. But the bottom line is a guy comes up, Jin Yang, and it's this new startup where he takes a picture and it identifies the food. And they're like, oh my God, they've got these VCs and they're going to go invest in it and it's huge. And he's like, no, it only identifies hot dogs. But the important thing he says, it also identifies if it's not a hot dog. But the cool thing that HBO did, and the reason I kind of posted here is, okay, so they've got a successful TV show. It's on HBO and that sort of thing. But they're extending this stuff out into, things that people can do. So they're, sure, they do little video clips of, little vignettes and things that kind of tie into the show or backstories or tangential things. But now they're actually spending the money to develop a stupid little app, and it works apparently. I mean, they actually built the app. So you point out it, and something looks like a hot dog. It says, yeah, it's a hot dog, and if it isn't, it doesn't. So.
Hey, just to get back onto the not hot dog. Okay, so the one link that I did do for the Google thing came out of their Google conference, not their conference, but their summer, whatever. Is that they are really now, it seems like they're lasering in on destroying last click attribution.
The cross-platform attribution model that they're rolling out. It's interesting.
Yeah, and talking about in-marketing targeting and so forth. They're really trying to say, look, we got you off the keywords. Now let's get you off of last click, because it's counterproductive to really making us more money.
We did an episode on attribution modeling on the podcast, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago. It's 53 or 54 was the number of the episode. But we kind of broke down the different attribution models that people use and the pros and the cons. So it's for those that are confused about attribution modeling, I feel like it was a good kind of 101.
Can you put a link up for the one podcast video? Because I listened to the podcast. I thought it was a brilliant conversation, because I don't think people really understand all the variances that are out there right now as to attribution modeling, even distribution, scalability, leveraging, persistence, time erosion. I mean,
like 5. There's at least 5, right?
Yeah. You guys went through all of the ones that I know that are the leaders in those conversations.
Yeah, we missed 1 or 2 that just aren't common,
there's still a few off branches, but
yeah.
It'd be interesting to see with Google doing this now, what their solution process. Because the one part I missed out of this article was, okay, I understand, but what are you saying is best? Mm-hmm. All they're saying is this isn't what you should be doing, but they're not really lending themselves to what you should be doing.
Right.
And I guess they're letting the market kind of decide. If they're being told no, that makes everybody else look elsewhere, and then what elsewhere turns into popularity might be a better alternative. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm more of an even distribution time decay. To me, I like that one more comfortably to say that based on frequency factor. Frequency factor, time erosion, and time decay, and even distribution. So that if you frequent, that ups it, and also time duration on one ups it, and you evenly start the distribution on it, so that by the end of it, you can go back and say this one was hit more than once and more time was spent on this, so these had more influencing factors in the attribution string.
Yeah, and ideally, I probably like it when you use different attribution models for different types of guests, repeat versus new, things like that.
It's no one shoe fits all. You're right.
Yeah, no. And I think that's again the complicated aspect of where people want the real easy, and that was the thing. That's why last click was so, adopted. It was easy. You go, well, there's a click, I got it, and it's I guess we're done. It just doesn't. It isn't accurate. Is the or it doesn't accurate?
Yeah, you add up your return for all your things, and all of them are, you made more money than you actually made.
Now, in fairness, there probably is some business out there where last click is like That's it. Perfect. We don't care about anything else. It's just this. That is what triggers all of our sales, and screw it. But
no, but that also, I noticed in this article the way they phrased it, you can take the same argument they're making about the demise of last click attribution and immediately apply it to first click attribution. All singular attribution is wrong.
Right.
To say that this was the start of the conversation is just as wrong as to say this was the end of the conversation. It's the engagement process through both ends and the contribution of both ends that create the attribution value proposition.
Just think about it logically. How you first just stumble upon something, and then your consideration period, your selection, and then the moment of truth when you actually pull the trigger. There are so many factors, so many influences. To boil that down to one point it just doesn't make sense.
No, especially when you're talking about spending or attributing dollars to be spent.
Yeah, and I think that's why people have been lazy and taken the easy route with last click, because they need a number to tell them what decision is right, and there's not an easy way to get the right number. So we always encourage people, whatever attribution model they're using, don't take things on blind faith, because certain attribution models are going to favor certain types of advertising, right? So top of funnel, bottom of funnel, things like that. You have a big variance, mobile versus desktop. Going to be huge variance in what the ROI is for different attribution modeling, right? Because people tend to start on mobile, they tend to finish on desktop currently, So there's a lot of just nuance. So looking at numbers on their own is somewhat meaningless. So we really trained our folks to look at the trends over time and use maybe multiple attribution models to measure the same thing, but to look at it over time. And at the end of the day, we're just making decisions about where do we invest our money in the future. So when you're using multiple attribution models, comparing over time what's getting better, what's getting worse, you know where to shift your budget. That's how we use it.
Thank you for reminding me. One thing I got as a thought in my head when I was listening to the podcast, and you guys were going through this, think about the weather people on TV, which are never right, but they're close to being right than most other people, is they don't use one weather model. They actually show several weather models. That's why we get the spaghetti patterns in hurricane season and so forth, is that they're showing several different models for the same event. And then aggregating them, which may or may not be a good choice, but aggregating them into a single path of probability. We, in the same way what you're just talking about, you can take the same event cycle and change and show variable attribution strings in correlation to it, see if there is a value similarity between each of them or any commonalities you can draw from. Now, it can create analysis paralysis. You can put yourself in a corner because you think there's a lot of everything. But by the same token, it can sometimes give you a generalized direction that at least it might be saying in this circumstance, this model is a more accurate representation based on repeatability. We created the same action, and the same result kind of happened based on this model's diagram. So you validate it, and now say from now on, let's just put this as a sticker that says when we do these types of campaigns on these platforms for this product, let's do this attribution string as a relevant value factor of strategy. And that's process. But what we just went through in that little discussion, name how many people do that right now. I mean,
it's a few. And I think the fear of doing it wrong holds a lot of people back because it's complicated. I mean, I have a degree in physics with space science, right? I understand complex math. I really understand complex math. This is hard for me. It's hard really for people that have no math background, right? So understanding statistics and probability and things like that, it's really hard. So a lot of people are just so intimidated by it. Well, what we try to tell people is there isn't a right method and there isn't a wrong method. You just got to be consistent. You got to pick one or two and continue to use it, and then reevaluate it every year or so how you're measuring it and whether it still makes sense. Because the attribution model I used before mobile was so big probably isn't as effective as now, because mobile has had a big influence and really penalizes early things in the funnel, because a lot of times the conversion is happening on desktop. So
I pick them because of the
just
uniform.
pick one.
I like the team. If they get the orange uniform, I pick them if they're going to win the football game. That's how I look at it. So,
There you go.
No math required. Throw all the little spaghetti charts up, pick your favorite color, and that's the one we stick with. No, to your point, it is. And just as soon as you're right, it turns out to being wrong, because whatever you were able to replicate may not be able to be replicated again, because as the time funnel moves forward, the events and activities change and shift, and so does prioritization. So you're putting a ballpark together is all you're doing.
Yeah, and you don't have access to all the data points. You only have a very small slice of the pie that you're looking at. So
you're only looking at certain factors.
That's why we have this data, because 20 years ago this data didn't exist. You're completely blind. That's why 50% of advertising was misspent, because it wasn't effective. You just didn't know it. But now,
and they couldn't tell which. But the problem with that was always they never knew which 50%.
Right. Exactly.
Well, okay. So just to tell you one of my fallacies of what I'm going to do is that we're doing a lot of data scraping right now, and we're trying to create correlations in a particular market. We're picking up flight lift inventory, flight lift rates. And we're trying, because we figure, my predication was airlines have a lot more resources, a lot more talent, a lot more of technology associated with how they're going to dedicate a multi-million-dollar piece of aircraft between routes.
Yeah.
And so if they start increasing mechanical into a certain destination at certain times of year, and also they start doing rate changes according to what that market represents to them, then they must be smart to know that they're doing it for the right reasons. So why can't we scrape that data and start creating predictive correlations?
That's a big assumption.
I can say it's great, but I'm pulling off of one reactionary data, not predicated data. Yeah. Even though I'm pulling, data forward saying, hey, look, the rate changes have occurred on these XY dates. It's still reactionary. They've done it. I'm reacting to it. So I'm already behind on the data curve. But even that said, it creates such confidence factors of yes versus no's. I can sit there and look, and there's a confidence factor of 85% negative rate impact, and an 85% confidence of positive rate impact, and you're looking at both, and you get both from the same results, but for different scenarios. You're saying, going, yeah, okay, let's take a dart out and shoot at the ball. Yeah. You can get this paralysis of analysis on this. You're like, I don't know what the variable is that creates the difference between these confidence factors. But anyway,
but airline pricing, you've got to be careful with, because a lot of these guys, these are still managed by. Yes, they've got very large systems that make recommendations, but it still comes down to individuals managing city pairs, and they're sitting there going, Spirit did whatever. We need to respond to that. Southwest did whatever, and all of a sudden, I just saw for the HSMAI conference, the ROC conference in Toronto, I've been tracking the airfares for it. It's had a price drop, pretty substantial, 10-12% price drop from Dallas to Toronto, and you go, that doesn't make any sense. Now, was it time because of some sort of purchase because of the Memorial Day weekend? Was it a competitive response to Air Canada, who has just separated from Aeroplan as their loyalty who the hell knows? And you don't, right? So again, you've got to take all these as signals and recommendations, but you can't just, tying back to our conversation, you just can't throw it into the bot and have the bot go make these changes, because you don't necessarily understand them.
Right. Well, the end story to my thing, the one thing I got out of all of it is lower prices good, advertise more, because they have less money that they have to spend on the flight and more they can spend on their hotel. So at the end of the day, I kind of came back to the beginning of the line where I didn't even go through the exercise and just like, hey, when the airline drops their price, good for us. Let's go promote that feeder market. At least I did. It's like, that was my brainchild work effort on that one. But anyway, Mongo just pawning Game of Life. Yeah, it just worked out that way.
Yeah.
Hey, Robert, before we run completely out of time with it, was there one, if you could cherry pick out of the 7 contributions you threw in there, is there one you mentioned?
I thought there was an interesting one on one of them does go down a little bit of a rabbit hole. We probably have time for it though. Was the Cycle Watch, Jan Freitag of Smith Travel, or STR. Let me post the link. Was really kind of saying, it's called Canary in the Coal Mine. The U.S. hotel industry has been at kind of a peak level, and it plateaued. I think I look at like the 12-month moving average on a weekly occupancy stats basis, and it plateaued like in January of 2016 or something like that from a true occupancy percentage. So basically, what he's trying to do is say, hey, what do we look at to see when the next downturn is going to occur? And lots of interesting lots of interesting ramifications. So I recommend looking at people look at that. But then the follow up to it is Rob Mandelbaum from a CBRE did something, and whoops, I'll post that link as well, of really looking at paying the intermediaries a look at hotel commissions. And I think this is a fantastic article for hoteliers to look at, because he really digs down from a true financial perspective of look at rooms department expenses. 42% on, again, this is on average for US, the 2015 numbers. A little bit over 42% goes to salaries and wages. 19% goes to payroll related expenses. So that's, between those two, you're up at, close to 60%. Another 11% about for, laundry, linen, supplies, basically cleaning the rooms. Commissions is now 11.4%. So that's actually more than cleaning the rooms and kind of your things on that, where reservation expenses maybe, which you might be able to compound on top of it, are 4.3%. So between the two, you're at what, 15.7% going into reservations and commissions, which is a pretty large number. So his basic drill down is, when you're looking on return on investment, you've got to look at the profitability side. That you can't just kind of do the return on ad spend sort of thing, because again, the number this past week I've seen a number of different groups, not Stuart, but groups say, hey, look at our 400% or 4x or 4.5x return on ad spend, and you kind of go, well, wait, that's purely revenue. Gee, that would be 25, equivalent of a 25% commission. I'm not sure why you're touting that exactly, but people don't realize. They just look and go, wow, that's fantastic. Let's go do that. And it's not a good situation. And I think once you get to the property level, the ownership level, things like that, there is a big gap in understanding just how these numbers work.
Stuart, I want to ask you a question. How do you, I always try to keep benchmark 10 to 1 because I try to keep it on the above the EBITDA line on cost. I can't control below the EBITDA line for a hotel, how they marginalize net profit or something. I just got to look at their profit line up to the EBITDA line and say, can I operate cost-wise market spend within their net profit margin? Because if you're past the net profit margin for them, they're not making money off of what you're doing. They're paying bills, don't get me wrong, but they're not making a profit off it. So I try to keep it under the What do you do?
It really depends on the situation. So because we got, a lot of the destinations we're in, we have condotels, so there's homeowners, so it's even worse math, right? Because now they're giving 40 to 60% to the homeowner before they get anything. So, a 4 to 1, they're really losing money on something like that. So we look at that. We also look at lifetime value of guests. So from sources. So obviously it's more expensive to acquire a new guest than it is to drive a repeat guest. So if it's new guests, our tolerance is a little lower in terms of ROI. And then we also look at online and offline data. A lot of folks are just looking at the what's being booked online, but we really try to track the revenue being generated over the phone too. So a lot of times you can't apples to apples track that. You have to extrapolate. But we have some clients that they're happy with a 3 or 4 to 1 return if it's a new guest and they know they're going to get them back repeatedly. But yeah, for most people, 10 to 1 is kind of that line in the sand that a lot of people draw, where it's anything less than that, it's not worth me not going to the OTAs for.
You make a good point, the acquiring of new guests versus the old in that sense, because there is a portion that has, but then it goes into marginalization, because if a certain amount of your market spend is dedicated to the increase of an audience, that's a tolerable cost, because that over average spend, like you said, lifetime value of that program gets diminished against, like, for 1 month, a heavy spend on that is going to diminish your net profit for that month in comparison to the 8-month spread of the entire campaign. It marginalizes down to a smaller percentage. When you balance it to what you're saying, that the larger or a flexible portion of it is just in recapturing previous guests, where the cost factor is much more diminished because you have a direct channel capability, different channels.
And we'll have budgets too allocated that aren't necessarily directly generate profitable revenue. Like some is speculative, we're experimental, looking for that arbitrage, or looking to build up an email database or a social following on a new platform just because we want to be early adopters on it. So there's always a contingency of budget for our clients that is a little more speculative, a little more risk reward, and we don't hold the ROI to the same high standard, So 85-90% of the budget is going to be, and this circles back to the beginning of the conversation, right? 80-95% of the total budget is going to be on what we know is going to work. It's going to drive a great return on investment. But then 5 to 15% is going to be that contingency budget that we're just going to go and try the bots and the shiny new things because, hey, we're going to find some stuff that works. There's a lot that doesn't work, but we're going to find some stuff that does.
Right. Yeah. No, you're good. I feel like that I'm not crazy thinking that way. Because,
well, and one thing to just layer in at the end, kind of the end of the triumvirate, is the third article, which is basically hotel brands and the hotel loyalty member rate. Are they good for business? Which calls to the same thing. These points are expensive, and is this by giving discounts? Discounts off the top, which certainly directly falls to the bottom line. Is that good business? And my thesis is you need to understand these numbers, hoteliers, for your property of how this stuff lays out. So then you can start making some better informed decisions on how you handle your marketing budget. So you go, hey, in some cases we need to do more of what works, less of what doesn't, or we consciously do. We're spending part of this on experimental stuff. But that I don't think is necessarily these. It's certainly a best practice. I don't know if that's the standard operating practice.
That's the comparison between branded and unbranded. That's a value proposition to one and a liability to the other. And the liability, unfortunately, on this side lands on the brand hotel owner portion because and the argument goes on two sides. If you're a hotel that's not a destination hotel, you have very little to worry about on brand reward points redemptions because nobody really is trying to travel to you because you're not the place that people want to cash them in on. Conversely, if you're in a market that's high destination value, you have to mitigate into your revenue management strategy the cost associated with the membership redemption programs. And to be very real about this is you're redeemed, for those who may or may not know, who do know and to juggle it, is you're redeemed at certain value thresholds based on your occupancies. And at certain thresholds, you're given more per redemption of rooms based on points compared to if you're below thresholds. And it gets very dramatic when you get into the high 90 or mid 90 percentiles that if you come in and your threshold is at 95% redemption value, where if you're 95% occupancy, if you get a room above 95% that puts you into the 95% plus category, you get bar rate in your membership rewards value. The brand has to pay you because you're at that level. If you're one room below that 95%, you get a agreed upon rate, which is by far disparagingly less than the rate that you're getting for that event. Right. So there's a whole strategy value of making sure that if you're going to be doing what you're doing, sometimes it's better to sell one or two cheap rooms to bump your occupancy and get into the margin that gives you your redemption based on the amount of in-house inventory that's points driven. And that's stuff that new revenue managers or non-branded revenue managers do not know as a part of their strategy process. Yeah. That sometimes you almost are willing to give a room away because you know what it's going to do to the 50 rooms you got booked in on points redemption rates. So, yeah.
And I think the Wyndham program is going to be very interesting for that to see how that turns out. They
can do multiple tier redemptions and so forth. But yes, hey, we're at that point 2 hours, man. Which, by the way, awesome. Stuart, thank you, and Robert, thank you.
Awesome.
Fun conversations. But did you get the chance to post in that link to your podcast?
No, I haven't. I'll do it. Yeah.
Okay, if you can throw that in just so that for people on the playback, if they want to catch your, because I'm one of your huge fans on your podcast. I thoroughly enjoy your podcast. Now, this is show number 94. We did miss Mr. Tim and Mr. Ed, which we did not bash accordingly for not being here. We poked at him at the beginning, but we really didn't bash him other than calling Tim an arms dealer that travels the world doing illicit things, and Ed, for some bizarre reason, decided to put a client ahead of talking for 2 hours.
He said he was in the weeds. So
drugs. That was code. That was code.
I think so.
I know what he's actually doing. I'll tell you offline later.
I think Well, Stuart, we can just tell them it's fine. They're pivoting Flip to be like a medicinal marijuana thing. I think.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's some sort of I don't know if it's a full pivot or it's some sort of augmented service they're providing.
Yeah,
I don't know.
There's a whole other new Denver brand called Flip Out. It's been under growth for a long time now. You can get it pharmaceutically in other states. But anyway, yes. For everyone that now Show 95 next week, we are trying to get. Holly has a dear friend that couldn't join us a couple weeks back, who handles a lot of these conferences that I'm just dying to talk to him about. And we're hoping that he'll be able to join us as our special guest next week on show number 95. Show 100 lands on July 7th, and then our 2-year anniversary show 108 lands in August. Literally 2 years every week, which I'm pretty happy. I'm pretty proud of that. We never missed a week. So anyway,
Lauren's not asking for a chunk of his life back. That's good.
My wife over is looking at me with the really 2 years. You didn't know to stop at 1, right? Anyway, for those who want to find out more about what all of us do, Mr. Robert, how do people find you?
rockcheetah.com or at Robert K. Cole on most social channels.
Excellent. And Mr. Stewart, where can people find you and what you're passionate about?
Yeah, you can find us at fueltravel.com or on Twitter at fueltravel, and then you can tune in most weeks. We've actually gone to every other week right now for the summer, but most weeks on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you listen to podcasts, just search for the Fuel Hotel Marketing Podcast. And you can get links to the old shows there as well at fueltravel.com/podcast.
And I can't recommend it enough. It is an outstanding podcast that you have put together in both content.
It's not all hotel related, I'll be honest.
No, but you know what? The dialogue is interesting. It really, truly is. It's just, if you're into this space, it's a great conversation.
I've got a question, Lauren, on podcast clients. Do you use iTunes or what do you use?
Well, iTunes is just distribution. To make podcasts, I mean, you can speak to it as well.
No, not to make. I mean, just on the distribution side.
How do you consume it?
So, what do you listen to podcasts on?
Oh, I tend to listen to it on my podcast on iTunes just because that's where but Stitcher's my backup. I have stuff I subscribe to. And gentlemen, thank you so very much for the time today. We will hopefully see you next morning.
Bye.